What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, folks, so we've been keeping up with the redistricting fight that's been going on all over the country at the behest of Donald Trump, according to Democrats. But, once again, folks, this is what I say. All these news articles, they'll try to frame everything out like, oh, this is all at Donald Trump's behest and all this other stuff. But you know what? Donald Trump just come out and said something, mentioned this kind of off the cuff, made a statement about this, and then all of a sudden we had all this legislation, and all of a sudden, like instantly, we had all these districts drawn up on these maps. We had all these new maps already drawn out, all the legislation writ, everything was already done when Donald Trump made that statement. You know what that telegraphs to everybody? That somebody's being disingenuous here, folks, that Democrats are trying to make you believe that Donald Trump said something and the Republicans all around the country said, how high? Donald Trump said jump, and they said, how high? That's not how it is. These things take years to work themselves out, to flush out all the inaccuracies or whatever it may be, right? So we've got this news article coming in, and, to be fair, this news article is much bigger than the headline, and we're going to discuss that. So check this out, y'all. Judges allow North Carolina to use a map drawn in bid to give Republicans another U.S. House seat. That is right. So, the party of gerrymandering, like I was talking about in my last video, the party of degeneracy, the party of ill-gotten gains, if you will, the Democratic Party. They are the party of gerrymandering, as a matter of fact. They invented the term. I know that's not a true statement. That is a outright lie, basically. They did not invent gerrymandering, but they have taken up that mantle, if you will, of gerrymandering. All you got to do is look at Illinois, I think. Yeah, Illinois. Well, they have this congressional district that looks like a worm, if you will. It snakes down like this and kind of moves like that. Yeah. Why? Why is that? It's fascinating, folks. And, it just so happens that at 2 points, or two big liberal cities. That's interesting. And, that is repeated consistently over and over and over and over again in blue states and in red states. Republicans gerrymander as well, too, but just not to the same extent. The Democrats do. Democrats in California in particular have even blatantly said that they want Latino districts. Check this out.
Evidence of that, and I'm not sure what the court based that on. Our lawsuit in California says just that. California used race. They wanted to draw Latino districts, and they said that. This isn't a theory or something. The legislators said that when they're passing this map, that they wanted an additional Latino district. So if that is enough to strike down the Texas map, then this one should get stricken down as well. Although the Texas maps, we do believe, are lawful and constitutional, and we do think that's going to make its way quickly up to the Supreme Court.
Well, that would mean that the California redistricting would probably be legal, too.
No, because we actually have evidence that the legislators improperly used race to draw the maps. They said it, and they've said it on record. And we're going to have a court hearing on December 3rd, and we'll get an answer very quickly.
Yes, folks, so that kind of gives some of the game away of where we're going with this. The U.S. Supreme Court, of course, that video was recorded before we had the news. The Supreme Court is allowing Texas to use its newly redrawn maps, right? So that it went through the court system, and several judges kind of struck it down or whatever, made its way to the Supreme Court once again, and the Supreme Court said no, everything appears to be on the up and up. California, Prop 50, like the guy in the video said, they said it verbatim on the record that they want Latino districts. That is drawing your lines based upon race, folks. And that is illegal, blatantly illegal. And apparently in North Carolina, we are going through with this. But they're going to mention all these things in this video. That's why I said that this video is going to be much bigger than the headline. Let's get into this, though. A federal three-judge panel on Wednesday allowed North Carolina to use a redrawn congressional map aimed at flipping a seat to Republicans as part of President Donald Trump's multi-state redistricting campaign ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And you see, once again, they're saying, oh, Donald Trump's multi-state redistricting campaign. I find that so hilarious, folks, because they do this all the time. They're trying to pretend that these state legislators are just acting and working at the behest of Donald Trump. When, once again, these things, you can't just draw up a congressional map overnight. These things take months and months and months to draw up, folks, if not years to draw up and for them to actually come into fruition. So at Donald Trump's behest, was he mentioning this on the campaign trail? No. No, he wasn't. So they have been working on this for months and months and months, if not years, folks, if not years. So that right there just goes to show you the bias of the Associated Press. These people manipulate everything, folks, everything, every aspect. Every single news article, we find some form of manipulation, whether it's micro manipulations, blatant manipulations, obfuscated manipulations. There's all kinds of different manipulations that we could point out, folks, that these mainstream news machines just pump out manipulation. That's all they do. The map targets the state's only swing seat, currently held by Democratic U.S. Rep. Don Davis, an African-American who represents more than 20 Northeast counties. The first district has been represented by black members of Congress continuously for more than 30 years. Now, what was the point in that statement, right? The Associated Press is intentionally injecting race into this thing, saying that this district that has been obliterated has been represented by a black individual for more than 30 years, continuously, by the way. What is the relevance of this? Nobody knows the relevance of this. But what the Associated Press is trying to do, once again, this is to telegraph to you that Republicans are evil, and we're not even going to mention Democrats at all, because we can't mention Democrats outright. This is so fascinating, folks. That's what it's meant to telegraph. Huh? What does race have to do with anything? It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with anything at all, not in the least. But they want to inject that in here. It's just totally irrelevant who represented that district. The district doesn't exist anymore, folks. And who is to say that it won't still be, or, what's the remainders of that district won't be represented by some black representative? Who is to say that Don Davis will not maintain control of that seat? Who is to say that? Nobody. They don't know. They just want to make you think that Republicans did this to get rid of a black person from Congress. That's all they did. That's all that was meant to do right there. See what I mean by micro manipulations? The three-judge panel unanimously denied preliminary injunction requests after a hearing in Winston-Salem in mid-November. The day after the hearing, the same judges separately upheld several other redrawn U.S. House districts that GOP state lawmakers initially enacted in 2023. They were first used in the 2024 elections, helping Republicans gain 3 more congressional seats. After Trump's push, Democrats returned fire. Trump broke with more than a century of political tradition by directing the GOP in North Carolina and several other states this year to redraw maps at mid-decade without courts requiring it to avoid losing control of Congress in next year's midterms. Once again, folks, see, they're really trying to push this on thick now that this is all at Donald Trump's behest. Sure, did Donald Trump make that statement? Yes, there's no reason to deny reality, right? We're not going to do that around here. We are reality bringers, as a matter of fact, around here. So yes, Donald Trump did say these things. But once again, when you look into all this, they can't just draw these maps overnight or within a few weeks. No, I'm sorry. Look, these things take months, if not years. So what does that mean? If these maps were ready to go essentially when Donald Trump made these statements, what does that tell you, folks? They've been working on this for a while. And like I said, they use this same, in the 2024 election, they use this same basically map or whatever in the 2024 election before Donald Trump was even elected. So they're basically debunking their own argument here. I love it when they do that, right? It's like I always talk about. They've got this football-sized field, right? A football field-sized field. And I love saying it that way for some reason. But and it's just full of rakes. And Democrats, the Associated Press right here in particular, they're just walking through and just stepping on a rake and it just coming up and smashing them right in the face. And they're like, oh, that kind of hurt. And then taking a step and boom, that kind of hurt. Taking a step. They're not getting the picture that they are destroying their own credibility here. You know, they make it so incredulous just to buy into all this. It's ridiculous. Democrats need to pick up just a handful of seats to win control of the House and impede Trump's agenda. Right? And that's not a statement from anybody. That is a statement directly from the Associated Press. So they're definitely not the fair arbiters of reality. They're not the fact bringers. No, they are giving you manipulated garbage here. Besides, North Carolina, Republican-led legislatures or commissions in Texas, Missouri, and Ohio all have adopted new districts designed to boost Republican chances next year. In California, voters countered by adopting new districts drawn to improve Democrats' chances of winning more seats. And the Democratic-led Virginia General Assembly has also taken a step toward redistricting with a proposed constitutional amendment. Is that so? Yeah, but that doesn't speak to redrawing maps, does it? No. Thus far, many lower courts have blocked Trump's initiatives, only for the conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court to put those rulings on hold. That includes a recent ruling in Texas where a redrawn U.S. map was engineered to give Republicans 5 more House seats. That is right, folks. It definitely was, because we looked at the map, and hang on just a second, we figured out a lot of people have moved from California to Texas since 2020. So, yeah, we need to redraw these maps and figure this thing out. And that's exactly what they did. North Carolina GOP seeks 1-seat swing. North Carolina's Republican-controlled General Assembly gave final approval on October 22nd to the redrawn map. Democratic Governor Josh Stein's approval wasn't needed. North Carolina Republican Senator leader Phil Berger said Wednesday's court decision thwarts the radical left's latest attempt to circumvent the will of the people in a state that voted for Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024. As Democratic-run states like California do everything in their power to undermine President Trump's administration and agenda, North Carolina Republicans went to work to protect America's first agenda, Berger's statement said. But others called Wednesday's decision a bad one. Oh, is that so? Of course, they're going to disagree with this. This ruling gives blessing to what will be the most gerrymandered congressional map in state history, a map that intentionally retaliates against voters in eastern North Carolina for supporting a candidate not preferred by the majority party, said Bob Phillips, executive director of Common Cause North Carolina. Oh, it's going to be the most gerrymandered map because they redrew for one district, basically. So one district, and the whole map is the most gerrymandered map in American history, huh? Do these people think about their statements before they make them? Doesn't seem like they do. The ruling covers 2 lawsuits. One filed by the state NAACP Common Cause, and voters sought a preliminary injunction on First Amendment grounds. First Amendment grounds. Interesting. They said Republican lawmakers unconstitutionally targeted North Carolina's Black Belt instead of Democratic voting areas with higher white populations because in 2024 they organized and voted for their preferred candidates and had sued over the 2023 configuration of the district. Once again, that would assume that the Black Belt predominantly votes for Democrats. That would assume that. But did they draw the map based upon race? That's the question that you must ask. And folks, no. No. Unlike in California where they blatantly said this, these places know that you have to draw the map based upon party affiliation. That's how they do this. They draw them based upon party affiliation for the most part. That's how it goes. right? And trying to draw it up for Republicans or whatever, that doesn't mean that you're going to disenfranchise anybody. Doesn't mean that at all. That's what they're trying to tell you. In the second lawsuit filed by voters, the case for a preliminary injunction rested in part on an argument that the use of 5-year-old census data due to the mid-decade redrawing of districts violates the Constitution, including the 14th Amendment's one person, one vote guarantee. Additionally, they said mapmakers relied on race in violation of the First and 14th Amendment. Yeah, but clearly the courts found that they didn't. And who is to say that? Once again, how do you know if they relied on race or not? You can't tell that. Once again, there's no way to know that. But as we saw, we have evidence for in California, they blatantly said this. And anyway, besides, what would that matter anyway? Why would that matter at all? It shouldn't matter, because these people ultimately are still getting representation. I'm just saying. Attorneys for the Republican lawmakers argued that their map drawing intentions were political and allowable, not racial, and were part of a nationwide partisan redistricting arms race. They rejected assertions about old census data and retaliation over activities protected by the First Amendment, saying they don't align with Supreme Court precedent. That is right. They don't. They absolutely don't. You're not going to disenfranchise any voters by doing this, by redrawing these maps. That's the argument being made, but they never can suss out exactly why. Why are you disenfranchising, right? Because, they're getting represented by a Republican and not a Democrat? Well, how do you know the makeup of each and every single individual household and how they will vote in the next election? You don't know which way they're going to vote. You can only look at how they used to vote, how they have voted in the past. But that doesn't predict how they will vote. Not in the least, folks. So, once again, politicians make arguments and people switch parties. This happens all the freaking time. So once again, you can't say that just because this neighborhood is predominantly black and you split that neighborhood in a redrawing effort does not mean that you're disenfranchising that entire neighborhood or whatever, right? That's not what that means. What that means is people move, right? And we have a cap on congressional members. And so when you draw these districts, the general number, I think it's 776,000 people must be represented basically in each district. So when people start moving around like they did after COVID, these people, they have to redraw the maps. A lot of people moved. That is the main reason why they're redrawing all these maps. A whole lot of people moved. And the bad part about it is, at least for Democrats, is that people moved from these urban liberal areas to more rural areas or Republican districts, so giving Republicans more power. Thus, therefore, that is why you get, like in Texas, Texas picking up 5 extra congressional seats, right? Those are taken away from California, generally, New York, other places where these people moved from to Texas. That's how that works. It has nothing to do with race. They just wanted to inject their partisan politics nonsense into this situation and try to shame Republicans by pointing the finger and saying you're a racist. Trying to make basically playing the race chicken here by calling them racist and see if they back down. But they're not backing down, folks, because that slanderous term doesn't have weight anymore. They've used it way too much, folks. It's like the boy that cried wolf at this point. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Are the Republicans playing racial games here? It doesn't seem that way to me. Once again, if I take a step back and kind of zoom out to 30,000 feet and look at everything, it's partisan, sure. But once again, if you look at it traditionally, you know, Democrats have done their fair share of gerrymandering, folks, and they use very inventive ways of trying to make these arguments and redraw these maps. Like, well, we gotta have this district right here. You know, it's gotta do this little dogleg thing so we can get the right. It's ridiculous nonsense, if you ask me. But like I said, that's all I got on this one. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Don't forget, by the way, smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click the join button, sign up, and become a member. It's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. But without any further ado, folks, it's the end. So I want you guys to remember one thing. Look, Jesus died on the cross to save us. He absolutely did. And that's something we must be thankful for. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everybody, by the way. So, you guys must be thankful for that. So, you guys try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.